And joining us right now is Fox News Channel Chief Washington Correspondent James Rosen. He's been all over the story of the president's seeming build-up to a military intervention in Syria after the chemical attack that hit last week in that country. However, James Rosen, a lot of setbacks over the last 24 hours. First and foremost, of course, the British Parliament giving a thumbs down to Prime Minister James Cameron. They will not be joining the United States of America. How much of a blow is that to the president's efforts?
Well, it's certainly not a welcome development from where the Obama administration sits, Larry. Of course, what the British House of Commons voted on yesterday was whether or not to participate militarily. But there are, of course, other ways in which the British or any particular ally of ours can participate. They can share intelligence. There can be refueling operations, all kinds of ways in which perhaps they can help. But I don't think anyone ever looked at this and said that the United States was not capable of conducting whatever operations it intends to conduct on its own. And that may well be how it winds up. We do expect that the French will join in. They have said that their will to participate is not contingent upon what happened in London yesterday. We do see the Germans also saying that they have no intention of participating in a military strike against Syria for this chemical weapons attack of August 21.
James Rosen,
so it's kind of a situation where you have multiple countries now weighing in, but ultimately it's going to be a U.S.-led operation one way or the other.
Go it alone if necessary. But James, can I just follow up on one quick thing? You said that they're not going to participate militarily, but they may have some sort of assistance. We've had a lot of generals on this week talking about this. We've talked about a lot of the operations. And Cyprus, the nation of Cyprus, keeps coming up as a very critical thing. Great Britain apparently has a base there. Is your understanding from the administration that they believe that they can still use that base potentially for airstrikes out of Cyprus, despite the vote yesterday?
I suppose they'd have to have the lawyers take a look at exactly the text of the resolution upon which the House of Commons voted to see if that's still in play. But I don't think that the United States is going to feel as though if the lack of participation by the UK is going to doom the mission somehow.
All right, so what about our Congress? I mean, Congress got a briefing last night about the intelligence. We hear that today the American people will be given a more sanitized look at some of that intelligence that justifies the action that the president wants to take. But there was this story yesterday that came out of nowhere on the Associated Press at about this time yesterday that said an intelligence source says that the intelligence on what happened in Syria is not a slam dunk. So help me sort out where we are in regard to the intelligence on this matter.
Right. It was we should point out, Brian, an anonymous source, an unnamed source that said that this is not a slam dunk. The collective intelligence that we have, that demonstrating, as the administration sees it, that the Syrian regime affirmatively used chemical weapons to kill hundreds of civilians on August 21 near Damascus. Look, the administration will tell you that this is very different from the intelligence assessments that were produced in the run-up to the Iraq War, because here in Iraq, they'll tell you the situation was one where there was this shared assessment between European and U.S. intelligence agencies that there were weapons of mass destruction in Saddam Hussein's Iraq. We did not ultimately find them. Here, it is clear to see that there was a chemical attack, and they will tell you that it doesn't really require a great deal of classified intelligence to see this, that you have all the videotapes, that you have eyewitness accounts, that you do have some early soil samples that were taken before that site was completely contaminated, and that there's an abundance of evidence, even in open source, what the intelligence folks would call open source, which means stuff you could see with your own eyes and you don't need a clearance to get access to. That would tell you that there was such an attack and that the regime is the only likely culprit for having waged it.
Yeah, I know that is the sense, but I looked at that bit of intelligence that story on the AP naming an unnamed source, and I looked at it and I said that sounds like the CIA doing a little CYA.
Which has been known to happen in northern VA from time to time.
yes. But I mean, after Benghazi, I think the intelligence community feels a little burned by how that was all laid at their feet. Somehow, initially they tried to say, well, it was an intelligence failure. I think they want to say, just for the record, we're just letting you know it's not a slam dunk.
Let's be clear. When we say it's not a slam dunk, when that expression is used, first of all, it's a reference back to the Iraq War period when then CIA Director George Tenet was said to have described the intelligence about Saddam Hussein's WMD programs as, in fact, a slam dunk. Again, all of us knows from watching, Columbo and CSI and all the others in between, that if you have 99 pieces of a puzzle, you probably don't need the 100th in order to get a good picture. And in this case, as you mentioned, Congress was briefed by key administration officials last night around 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. This was an unclassified briefing, but nonetheless, Representative Eliot Engel, Democrat of New York, emerged from it afterwards saying that the administration officials, which included the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, the Director of National Intelligence, and other key players, had, among other things, made reference to the fact that they did have access to intercepts of telephone conversations from amongst the Syrian regime discussing the chemical weapons attack, and also that they had access to footage, I believe, taken from satellites showing movements of Syrian personnel in such configurations that made it look very clearly as though they were preparing for something like a chemical attack. And so that's part of the intelligence. And again, when someone says no slam dunk, that's somewhat ambiguous. And of course, that's an unnamed source. But the administration is sticking to its guns on the validity of the intelligence in this case.
James Rosen is our guest. Of course, he's Fox News Channel's chief Washington correspondent. And James, it's remarkable where we've come this week. It seems like coming into the weekend and on Monday, we had leaks from the White House saying, the strike's going to happen. It could happen by Thursday. It's going to be this long. This is what we're targeting. It's going to be Tomahawk missiles. Then by the time we got to the president's interview with PBS NewsHour, he was saying he hadn't made up his mind. And I don't know. I almost get the sense, and I wonder if you could just, as an observer of these things, since you've been around, and especially during the Iraq War, and you saw buildups at that time, are you getting the sense from this president that he's really quite reluctant to do this, and he almost feels obligated to just do something?
I think most observers would agree that Barack Obama harbors a kind of a revulsion at the projection of U.S. military power. There are many observers who would say that that's not a welcome attribute in a commander-in-chief. I think that the Obama administration's policy on Syria has evolved over time. It has not always, to all observers, appeared to be coherent as policy. I think many observers would see in the current context of the response to the chemical weapons attack of August 21 a kind of microcosm of the 2+ years of Obama administration policymaking on Syria, where it doesn't always appear to be clear what the objectives are, what the tactics are going to be. And when we heard Vice President Biden just yesterday again declare that the president has not made up his mind, one wonders about the process, because the DOD presented the options to President Obama for some time already, and the options are not limitless. And the menu of targets that the president can choose in Syria is also not limitless. I was reporting for Fox News yesterday that the targets are likely to extend beyond the capital city, Damascus.
Right.
That they are likely to target the delivery systems for Bashar al-Assad's chemical weapons arsenal. And to that end, this will mean command and control facilities inside Damascus, but also short-range missile launchers and other kinds of batteries, artillery batteries, that are located in mountainous regions outside the city.
All right.
And then I had a lot of people on Twitter saying to me, gosh, are we going to tell them the time and coordinates as well?
Yeah, well, that's
exactly. Just don't draw a map in the dirt like
we'll be coming
Geraldo,
in
James.
low. That's right.
Great stuff, James Rosen.
Yeah.
Always great to have you. Thanks so much.